DLCD, and he will be sharing information from Land Conservation and Development. So Patrick, I invite you to take over.
Hey, thank you, Lisa. Can you guys hear me okay?
You can.
All right. Can you see my presentation?
It's in not quite presentation mode.
All right.
But it's getting there.
Getting there. How's that look?
Better. Now we get your notes.
I don't have any notes.
We have the double screen.
Okay, put the next slide.
Here, let's see. Let me see if this changes it.
That's it. That's what we want to see. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I know you all have a packed agenda. Really pleased to be here this morning. Before I get started, I would like Dawn Hurt, your new Eastern Oregon Regional Representative, to just briefly introduce herself. I know we are limited on time, but Dawn, if you could just pop on screen and just say hi, and then I'll take it from there. Thanks.
Thanks, Patrick. So Patrick's going to run the show for me this morning because I'm pretty new, as you all heard. I started about 3 weeks ago from the DLCD, or for the DLCD, and prior to that, I worked for the City of the Dalles 26 years. So I'm really excited to be representing Eastern Oregon, and it's kind of where my family all grew up. So this is some old stomping grounds that my family knows. So I'm glad to be here today. Thanks.
Thanks, Dawn. Okay, well, we'll just get started. I want to jump right into a couple of items that are particularly important to the discussion on workforce housing. I want to start by just showing a relationship between the statewide planning goals, Goal 10, of which all cities and counties have implemented a housing element in their comprehensive plan. So this is just a little chart to show how the statewide planning goals and the Oregon laws, the statutes, inform our rules, the administrative rules, and how the administrative rules then inform local comprehensive plans, ordinances, and local decisions. On this chart, you'll see that recently the Oregon legislature has adopted a number of updates to housing laws. These have created new administrative rules, and statewide have caused cities and some counties to take action on updating their zoning codes. There's different responsibilities for housing planning, housing production implementation in the state of Oregon based upon whether you're a city or not inside an urban growth boundary, or what your population threshold might be. City of Baker City, just we can cheer on Baker for making it to the 10,000 mark. My former city, Astoria, just made it over 10,000 as well. Sweet Home, Newport, there's several cities right at the 10,000 mark, and that's an important population threshold for Oregon. The legislature decided that they wanted to focus on larger cities first, or at least initially in the 2019 legislation on middle housing, House Bill 2001, and then the companion bill, House Bill 2003, on housing production strategies. You here in Northeastern Oregon are not subject to the majority of those rules. The city of LeGrand, city of Baker City must allow 2-family dwellings or duplexes anywhere a single family detached dwelling is allowed. That was the duplex rule, I guess it was being called to and referred to in 2020, 2021. Cities have taken action. I listed a couple of other cities here population wise, because there is a threshold at population 2,500. Once a city reaches the population threshold of 2,500, accessory dwelling units must be allowed for any lawfully conforming residential lot that contains a single family detached dwelling. So Union, Enterprise, Elgin, as the cities grow, may look to that provision if it's not already on the books. You're going to hear in the next presentation about a lot of housing programs that are focused on what I like to call the capital A, affordable housing. Here at the department and direction by our commission, LCDC, the Land Conservation Development Commission, our focus is really on production and increasing supply and increasing options. And the way that the legislature has approached implementing this methodology is by requiring medium cities over 10,000 population and large cities over 25,000 population to adopt only clear and objective standards for their housing development. Single family zones already have, you will see in all of our cities, pretty straightforward standards for single family dwellings. Where we've gotten into trouble over the past couple of decades, really since the 1950s, in kind of the suburbanization of America, if you will, is that single family detached dwellings have become the only housing type that's permitted outright. Generally in cities before 2019, before the legislature took action, and you'll see in many other states, discretionary standards being required for housing developments, which means if neighbors don't like the project, if it's perceived as maybe tailoring development to income and other types of demographics that neighborhoods or neighborhood associations or neighbors feel uncomfortable about, it makes it very easy for local governments to deny those housing projects. We know that we have a severe underproduction of housing. And there's many, many reasons for this. The land use program is part of it. So we're taking action to ensure that every housing development proposal in large cities can only be reviewed under clear and objective standards. And then in medium cities have the same obligation. Smaller cities still have to apply clear and objective standards to single family dwellings. But what we are seeing what we are seeing is smaller cities like Adair Village, Coburg, and many others that I'm more familiar with here in the Willamette Valley are adopting provisions that medium and large cities have adopted. For example, if you don't have a cottage cluster ordinance in your city code, I encourage you to reach out to me or Dawn and have a discussion about what a cottage cluster ordinance could do for your city. It can open up small lot development. It can bring home ownership and equity building opportunities for people that couldn't otherwise buy into a housing market that's dominated by 10,000 square foot lots, which demand, large homes be placed on them to pay for that land cost. What we're trying to embark on here at the state is to incent small cities, even though you all are not under the same obligation as the larger cities. There are model codes, and there are many examples now where small cities can really pick and choose the types of housing options and the type of clear and objective standards that you would want to apply to housing developments. Again, our focus is on increasing supply, increasing certainty for developers and property owners, and getting more units, really smaller units, out on the ground. And I'm going to wrap up here by just reminding everybody about why we're interested in the work that we do, why the state has interest in housing in Union County and in Baker and in Wallowa, because just look at this lucky fellow with the bicycle, overlooking the Grand Ronde Valley and all of the productive farmland. It's important that we keep productive farmland close to our urban centers. Transportation costs are continuing to increase. We're not a wealthy state. We don't have but one Fortune 500 company located here in Oregon. So we don't have a humongous tax base to draw on. So we need our farmland to be productive. And similarly, we need our forest land to be productive. And the highest competing use in forest land is dwellings. And who doesn't want to live in a nice forested area? I mean, it's wonderful, but we really need to pay attention to, and for our purposes, encourage cities to build compactly wherever possible, keep development inside urban growth boundaries, and pay particular attention to natural hazards, which is kind of dominating the landscape recently. Okay, I've made it to the end. I think I'm on time. I know that was fast, but I'm going to hang out for the entire day. So please, looks like Dawn might too. So please feel free throughout the day. You know, if you'd like to send me a chat or you want to follow up or find me in a breakout room, would love to continue these conversations. I'm a huge fan of Northeastern Oregon. If you've seen me at a meeting, you probably heard me say that. And you know, I will say this with all seriousness. There's some work to do, especially in the cities, in regard to the zoning codes. There are some great opportunities for you all to really control what's coming at you. Growth is coming, and I know you know it. It's coming. People are fleeing cities. The internet is allowing people to live more remotely. Take control of your future. You have some vulnerabilities right now in your ordinances that I think could result in housing that could easily outstrip the workforce's ability to buy into the market. So I encourage you to work with us. We really, Dawn has a ton of local government experience in the Dalles, and I have a ton of experience on the coast. And you'll find at the department, we're not like we were 10 or 20 years ago. We really had to shed our sort of regulatory hats and roles. And now we like to posit that we're more of a supportive department, that we're supporting local governments in the work that they're doing. So really appreciate the opportunity to kick off today's meeting, and of course available for any questions you might have. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Patrick. We really appreciate you being here for all day and the opportunity to engage with you later. I forgot to say before you started, so I put it in the chat, that we're going to hold questions until the end. So we would like you to put your questions, if you have them for Patrick, into the chat, and we'll curate those and ask as many as we can that we have time for at the end of this session, and before we go into the next section. So our next speaker is Clayton Crowers, and I hope I got your name right. You're with the Northwest Housing Alternatives, and I invite you to take over.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the intro. And yes, you got my name and our organization's name right. We are not a housing authority, as so many people call us. We are a private nonprofit, and I'm going to put my PowerPoint up here. Are y'all seeing the PowerPoint here?
It's perfect. Great. Looks great.
Okay. So I'm kind of going to be picking up, and I'm really glad Patrick went first. I think that's a good kind of level setting in terms of these are all the DLCD planning goals are the thing that all of us that are creating any kind of housing, doing any work in this field are working within. So that's kind of the template for all of this other stuff. And I'll actually kind of loop back in at the end of my presentation on a couple of the zoning and land use things that folks can advocate for in their communities. Quick introduction on our organization. We are a private nonprofit. We've been around for 40 years now. We started off as a family shelter in Clackamas County. We've expanded into affordable housing development. We currently have over 2,000 units across the state. We have projects. I am under construction on a project in Ontario right now. We have 6 developments in Hermiston. We have construction going on in Warrenton, in Florence, we're in Medford, obviously in the Portland metro area, Salem. So all over the state, which it puts us in a unique place to kind of take the pulse of a lot of rural areas and build, stuff that actually suits each of those communities individually, as opposed to just slapping cookie cutter apartments all across the state. So before I dig into the nitty gritty of affordable housing and how it intersects with workforce housing, I wanted to kind of put some income numbers up here. What I find is that when people talk about workforce housing or affordable housing, they're kind of these amorphous terms that don't necessarily link up with actual income levels. And so I'm using a couple of benchmarks here in this graph. The gray is a household at 30% of the area median income. That would be classified as very low income by Housing and Urban Development, HUD. The next benchmark would be about 50% AMI. This would be, at low income. And again, these are HUD definitions. I'm not necessarily a big fan of those words, but you'll see those actually commensurate to income numbers. And then 80% would be, your, more like workforce middle income line. As you can see with, that obviously changes with family size, but it, kind of gives you a sense for, maybe you can think about like, well, where am I falling on this graph? Or where is somebody that I know or work with falling on this graph? Where is a senior that's living by themselves on a fixed income falling on here? And so I wanted to kind of have a few benchmarks within that of folks that are in the workforce and also in the housing market, and where they kind of fall in those areas. Just kind of depict two off of here in terms of a starting teacher. Let's say they are the sole income earner in their household. If we go back to this chart, let's say they've got 2 kids and they're the sole income earner. They're actually going to fall in this 50 to 60% AMI range, which is dead center for a lot of affordable housing, even though no one here would argue that they aren't in the workforce. So this is very much a workforce position. Same with a lot of these other folks. And I think a lot of, families found themselves over the last 2 years in that position where they were no longer a 2-income family that had kids, going to daycare or kids in school. And this really changed where a lot of families found themselves in terms of being able to afford housing. So talking about housing, kind of have this little flow chart here about the different types of housing. Kind of 2 of the big breakouts here are affordable and then market rate. And I'm using kind of these affordable and market rate are kind of loose terms at this kind of second tier of the chart here. Affordable can take lots of different forms. It can be built by lots of different organizations, and market rate can be the same. Market rate can be more affordable sometimes than actual affordable housing, depending on how it's built. But market rate can also be your super high end housing as well. One of the other terms, and this especially applies to a lot of older housing across Eastern Oregon, is naturally occurring affordable housing. That is housing that is filtered through the market. Maybe it was built, on the higher end of the market back in 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and is now kind of filtered down to be affordable. Ideally, that, housing is still kept in good shape. What I find though is that in a lot of communities, it was built by folks back in the 70s and 80s. They're retirement age now. They want to get out of it. They're not keeping it up, and a lot of it's falling into the ground. So not only is there the need to create new housing, but there's a huge need to preserve existing affordable housing, whether that's naturally occurring or this other type, subsidized affordable. And so this would be affordable housing that's built using some form of local, county, state, federal funding to help buy down rents in that housing. Basically, the smaller your loan needs to be for development, the more you can leverage lower rents. Most of those funds come with affordability covenants. And I've listed kind of a few of these. I think one term, I've put this in quotes, is Section 8 housing. In a lot of people's minds, all affordable housing is Section 8 housing. In Eastern Oregon, most housing authorities do not have a project-based Section 8 voucher program. And so you will actually find that a lot of affordable housing in Northeast and Eastern Oregon is actually not Section 8 housing. Folks that live there may have their own Section 8 housing choice voucher, but a lot of that housing is not project-based, where that voucher stays with the unit. So that's a term I hear thrown around a lot. It actually doesn't apply to most of the housing that we would think of as affordable in Eastern Oregon. A couple of, wanted to show a few different types of what affordable and workforce housing can come in. I think down at the bottom left here are those cottage clusters, kind of planned unit developments that Patrick was talking about. Affordable housing can also take the form of home ownership. The type of housing that our organization specializes in is multifamily rental housing. And so, these pictures kind of across the top of the screen show how those developments can look. The large brick building in the top left is actually a project we're under construction on in downtown Alphabet District, Portland, like super dense, big project, 149 units. So it can take that form, but it can also take kind of in the center, this is our current campus in Milwaukee. So kind of 2-3 story walk up style apartments that really kind of fit into an existing neighborhood or an existing downtown and aren't a 5-story concrete block. So that's something I want to, really like paint a strong picture of. Affordable housing today is not, it's not a Cabrini Green, it's not a rundown, woody walk up kind of thing. It can take a lot of different forms and still be that affordable housing. And a quick timeline on how this gets built. And I think I'll kind of, for folks that really want to dig into the specifics, these next couple of slides, I'm going to breeze through, but I'll be around for a breakout if folks really want to dig into like, well, how does this work? How does this get paid for? What's the process? I think the thing I want to highlight here is that a lot of our projects take 3 to 5 years. And that's like a smooth running project for affordable housing. I've just currently started construction on a project in Florence. We purchased that land in 2016, and we are just now starting construction. And so if there is a fear of not having enough housing in your community right now, but there's also a fear of affordable housing or more dense housing, start those conversations today, because you're not going to see results and you're not going to see units built for a couple of years. And that's if folks are really on the ball. So those things have to start, immediately in terms of planning out for the future. Again, I'm not going to dig into too many of these acronyms here. There are even dozens more that I don't even have up here in terms of how these projects get funded. The one I want to highlight though is LIHTC, Low Income Housing Tax Credits. It's a funding tool that is really unique to affordable housing. And it's kind of this federal, state, private conjunction of tax credits that allows a lot of affordable housing to get built. But it's also, not only is it one of the best sources, but it's also the most complex. And this is why organizations like ours and other affordable housing developers, we find ourselves to be really specialized, because we have to figure out this program and we have to balance all these different reporting and compliance requirements. We have to keep an investor happy. We have to keep the state government happy. We have to keep the IRS happy when they fund a project with low income housing tax credits. So that's something you'll hear that term LIHTC thrown around a lot. And obviously I'm happy to dig more into the specifics of that in a breakout. And then a quick kind of snapshot on the, these are more kind of traditional roles that you would see in any project, on the design side and on the construction side. The unique part about a role like mine, and overall developers, is that we're kind of behind the scenes. People always ask me, what do you do? And I kind of say, I don't do anything and I do everything, because we're the folks that are behind the architect, behind the general contractor, behind our service providers, behind our funders, kind of bringing everyone to the table. We don't actually know how to do any of this stuff, but we know where to find the knowledge to do it. And so that's why it's so important when you're talking as a city and you're maybe talking with a developer, dig a little deeper, ask them who the architects that you work with, who are the general contractors you work with. Super easy to then go look those folks up on the CCB website or other sources to be like, oh, this actually looks like a pretty reputable group, or it looks like there's 6 lawsuits pending for this general contractor. Maybe let's talk to them a little more. And a few kind of myths, or I guess misconceptions about affordable and workforce housing today versus what their reality is. I think the biggest thing that I hear in community meetings is the fear that affordable housing is going to bring down people's property values. And I would actually say that the housing that is there, that is being, just put out to pasture and is rotting away right now, is the thing that's actually bringing down property values, and the thing that is kind of scary and what people are afraid of. Organizations like ours, we're typically actually building the nicest development, affordable or market rate, in any community. Our project in Ontario is going to be delivering, I'd call it Class A, B+ apartments. It's going to be the nicest apartment building in Ontario, period. And that's pretty typical of what most affordable housing organizations are delivering across the state. And also the beauty of working with a lot of developers in kind of the affordable and workforce sphere is they are owner builder holders. And so they're not turning around and flipping that development. They're hanging on to it. Our organization, we have 50 and 100-year timeframes for building this stuff. One of the other ones is that affordable housing takes away from workforce housing development. And I hope after that slide I just showed on income levels, that it's pretty clear that workforce housing is actually affordable housing. And there's so much intersection there. There's such a huge overlap. And when you're working with organizations that are able to do a master development where you've got some affordable, some middle income, maybe some higher income, it's this awesome marriage of meeting those different needs and still being able to reach really low in that income level. And then obviously the term I hear all the time is character. Oh, we want to preserve the character of our neighborhood. I'll let folks read into that what they want, but I think everybody here knows what that word actually means. And the thing I just, I'm going to kind of wrap up on is that, people that are in affordable housing or in workforce housing or needing housing, those are your neighbors. Those are people that are already in your community. It's not people from somewhere else, folks that are going to bring, blight or crime to your communities. It's folks that are already there that need housing. So I think I'm about out of time here, but one quick little mention, and this is looping back to Patrick's presentation, is that everyone here has the ability to advocate for more affordable and workforce housing in their community. And that can be showing up at planning commission meetings, city council meetings, being part of housing advisory councils. I get invites every month, it seems like, to be on another community's advisory council. And it's so important to show up to those events and be a voice for housing. And you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to know the 50 acronyms that I just showed in that chart earlier. You just have to say, hey, I want to see density in my community. I want to see new housing types. I want to see some of these new regulations packages that DLCD is developing. And just kind of being there and dispelling some of these myths around apartments, around affordable housing, around cottage clusters, around ADUs. I think one of the biggest things is that density and well-built, thoughtfully built, more dense housing is not the thing to be scared of. The thing to be scared of is losing smart, awesome, talented people from your community because they can't find housing there. And so I think, everybody has that ability within their own communities. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be a developer like me to go out there and say, hey, we want housing, and here are some ways that this can actually get done. So I'm gonna wrap up there, and definitely drop questions in the chat. I'll be around all this morning to go in breakout rooms. Happy to answer questions and dig more into this stuff.
So Clayton, I really appreciated seeing some of the examples of affordable housing that you provided. Just getting those different visuals is pretty important in understanding what affordable housing can include, and that repeated importance of being involved. So thank you so much. Our next speakers are going to be Paula Hall and Robin Swales with Project Turnkey in Pendleton. So I would welcome you to take over at this point in time.
All right, so I apologize to the group. I'm actually in Hood River at another meeting, and can you give screen view to Robin, because we do have a presentation, or do you want me just to?
I think that can happen.
Robin should have sharing allowed. If there's a problem, let me know.
Okay.
Can you see
Okay.
it?
Yes, everyone can see it. So Robin, when I say next, just please go to the next slide. So first of all, thank you, and thank you for having us. And we're here to talk about our Project Turnkey. And if anyone wants additional information, like I said, I'm in Hood River this week, but we'll leave our contact information, and reach out to me if you have questions. So we do represent Community Action Program of East Central Oregon, the local community action agency. Next. Just to give some background, our community action serves Umatilla, Morrow, Gillum, and Wheeler counties. And then we have expanded our aging in place services to include Gillum, Wheeler, Sherman, Wasco, and Hood River County. So we have a service area from Meacham to, I always say, Cascade Locks. Next. And these are the primary areas of our service. Of course, today what we're talking about is housing and homeless, but we also provide energy and weatherization, of course, senior aging in place services, food nutrition, and then we own 4 different housing projects. We own 2 affordable housing projects. We own 1 farm worker housing, which is scattered sites. And then we also have a site that is for the developmentally handicapped. Next. And the initiatives around homelessness started with the 10-year plan to end homelessness. And if any of you who've worked in homeless services, you'll know that that 10-year plan to end homelessness expired about 20 years ago. But that was our kind of our springboard to think more locally. Okay, and so can you go back
There you go.
one slide?
Sorry.
Sorry about that. That's okay. And through that 10-year plan to end homelessness, a local coalition, a local group was formed, and that group is called Home for Hope, and they meet typically once a month, and they help do our homeless summit, Project Community Connect, and of course are the point contact for our annual point in time. But that was our first step of really becoming more localized and understanding the needs from a local level. Next. And so what we did at one time, our housing services basically was one-time rental assistance, lodging we provided, but it was limited to the coldest seasons of the year. Typically, we started in October and we were done in February, and the monies were a little bit more limited. So we, quite frankly, only provided motel vouchers if the weather during the night was going to go below 32, below freezing. And then, of course, we had our rental assistance programs, Housing First and Self-Sufficiency. But then something happened. Next slide. Not only did our entire world get hit with a pandemic, but in February of 2020, Umatilla County suffered a 100-year flood that affected over more than 500 residential units. And so we were trying to respond to the emergency needs of housing and rehousing people affected by the flood at the same time that we were also dealing with COVID. Next slide. So Oregon's investment to help our organization and help Oregon started with the winter shelter investment, also called Out of the Cold. And so those funds were awarded to us, just like they were connected, or like they were awarded to Community Connections in La Grande. And it was for the purpose of, basically putting people into motels, because congregate sheltering was certainly not an option. But for those of us who live in Eastern Oregon, we do not have congregate shelters. Sometimes we have warming stations, and those warming stations usually are open during, again, the most or the coldest months of the year. But with coronavirus, there was an additional caveat that we lost a lot of volunteers because of concerns for personal safety. So we started using motel vouchers, and this did help a lot of local motel hotels because it maintained a revenue stream for them. Next slide. And then as we started looking at the need for homeless, and we knew that we were spending, it would be nothing for us to spend 40, 60, 80,000 a month in motel vouchers. We knew that we couldn't maintain that long term. So it kind of started a collaboration. And on the local level, it was CAPCO, the Home for Hope. Remember, that's the group that we created and support to deal with local homeless initiatives. And then there was a group of individuals from Harbor of Hope. They are out of Portland, and I included them in this because they're the ones who kind of they kind of struck a nerve, or they kind of lit the match under the state to really kind of take a look at, other options in just paying motels to house our folks. And they looked at a couple of options out of California. California was, doing a lot of work with motels and so forth. And then they'd actually started with the conversion. So our county, we're very fortunate that the county commissioner also serves as our board chair. So he could tie the two things together, and it made sense that, we had to look more longer term. And then from the state level, we had the Association of Oregon Counties. They were instrumental in Project Turnkey. League of Oregon Cities kind of came a little late, but still important. And then, of course, Oregon Housing and Community Services, which is the primary funder for all things housing and homeless. And then Oregon Community Foundation became involved. And I was one of the first counties that they contacted, and this was before any of the resources at the state were committed. And I think they were using us as kind of a trial run. And I gave them basically an idea of what we, had in mind. Next slide. And so that's when you can go to the next slide. So there were 2 motels in Pendleton that were for sale, actually kind of catty corner from one another. The one that you're looking at was formerly known as the Whiskey Inn. It's a 35-room motel. The sale price was $1 million. It has a 1-bedroom manager's unit. And so we looked at this property. We had finally, when the money was secured for Project Turnkey, we submitted the application, and we worked with a project manager that Community Foundation provided, and they helped us walk through the process. I will tell you that one of the things that we learned is that, money isn't everything. You got to have the infrastructure, you have to have the staffing, you have to have the understanding of what it's like to run, run a shelter. And we didn't. Again, ours were motel vouchers and then housing first. So we started this conversation in November of 2020, and in late December, early January is when we submitted our application to OCF. And it then took a couple of months just to do some due diligence, and we took ownership of the property mid-March. And again, lessons learned. One of the things that we probably did too hastily, is that we thought, being good stewards of such a wonderful resource, we wanted to open our doors on April 1st. And so it was a lot of hurry up and get ready for the doors to open. And I would caution everyone to just take some time, get to know the building, get to know, what your plans are, because this turned basically from December to April. And here we are, the new owners, proprietors of a homeless shelter. Next slide. And go ahead. And this is the back side of it. The reason we chose this property is because it has easy access and view it's on a corner street, of course, and it was something that we thought would be better just to have the police be able to drive by and make sure there's no unwanted activities going on. And the other property, which is catty corner to this, it had more of an L shape, and there were a lot of hidden spots. So we went with this project. So initially, and this is what we went by for those almost for a year. The purchase of the motel was $1 million. Remember, it was 35 rooms, and it included a 1-bedroom apartment. And we thought that with upgrades and repairs, $285,000 is what we would invest. And then that would make the average cost per unit just at $35,000. But what reality, so go ahead and go to the next slide. These are some of the repairs that we had identified along with Oregon Community Foundation that would have to be addressed in some of that rehab, that $285,000. And so I won't go through this line by line. Some of it was easy fixes, but as you know, anytime you open up one door, another door presents itself. And, this was a property that was built in the 1960s, and plumbing, it's not a matter of just fixing a plumbing line or replacing a shower. It just exposed other problems. And so a lot of the people that have worked on this project always refer back to the money pit. And, it was, and Robin, I see, is smiling because she's been a part of that. But it's been a tough haul. And then of course we couldn't do a lot of those upgrades and repairs because there weren't contractors available. Some weren't still working, and those who were backlogged. So we just recently, I want to say March, April, had secured a contractor, a general contractor, to do the work. We paid a little over $200,000 for an architect to be involved and serve as the project manager. And that was an important thing because it's amazing how we thought that switching an outlet to this space would be an easy fix. And then you open that space up and realize there's another problem. Next slide. So when I showed you that budget earlier, we said that 1 million and 285,000 in rehab. What's more of a realistic is that we're going to have at least $1.2 million in rehab. And that not only includes general rehab and repairs, but it also includes the ADA rooms. So there were no ADA rooms on this property. And we made the decision to make convert 2 rooms to 100% ADA compliant. And then we also, the laundry facility or the laundry access for the project was just not user-friendly. In fact, if I told you it was in a hallway and you had to take the wet clothes from one room to another room to get dried, just kind of paints a picture. So we wanted the laundry room to be reconfigured so that not only would we have appropriate employee laundry so that we could launder the linens and so forth, but we also wanted to have an on-site laundry capacity for our guests. So we actually lost, I think, 2 rooms by doing that, or maybe we only ended up losing 1 room. So now instead of 35 rooms, we have 34 rooms plus the 1 manager unit. And so the cost per shelter room really is about $64,000 versus that $35,000, which is still a lot more affordable than affordable housing units. Next slide. Oh, I guess I'm done. That was pretty quick and fast. If you have more questions on the operational side, that is definitely Robin. Robin serves as our homeless services manager, and so she oversees Promise Inn activities as well as our other efforts. But I guess my message to the group is that hotel motel conversions can work, but take it slow and ask for input, advice, and get it the way you want it before you open the doors. And it's okay to take some time and breathe before you open it to your guests.
Well, that is a big project and good lessons learned on. It always costs more than you think it's going to cost.
Sure.
I know that for sure. So thank you for sharing the experience, and it's nice to know that you're going to have this great shelter available.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I believe Karen Appler has arrived, and she is our next speaker. She's with Energy Trust of Oregon.
Thanks, Lisa. Apologize. I've actually been on. My internet keeps crashing this morning, so I'm sorry. So I'm trying to make a plan B on the fly here. It never fails, technology these days. But let me get my slideshow up and running. Can everybody see the presentation okay?
It looks good.
Perfect. Well, thank you all. Keep my fingers crossed that my internet holds here for this the duration. My name is Karen Appler. I work for the Energy Trust of Oregon as an outreach manager in Eastern Oregon. I'm based out of a home office in Pendleton, and I serve communities from basically Hood River up to Ottawa County and over to Ontario, where Energy Trust service territory exists. Just wanted to send a nice thank you to Lisa, Sarah, and Chantal at the Economic Development District for including me in the presentation today. I wanted to provide a little bit of an introduction about Energy Trust of Oregon. We're going to skip the 2020 results because we have the 2021 results that I don't have in my pocket quite yet. Would be happy to share those with you at a future date. Want to provide a little bit of a residential program overview about the resources that Energy Trust has that might be relevant to these workforce housing discussions, and then talk about a few things that we have that are more specific to community-led programs like many of you are involved in, to talk about addressing housing needs in your individual communities. So just a little bit about Energy Trust of Oregon. We are an independent nonprofit that represents the energy efficiency and renewable energy programs for Portland General Electric, Pacific Power, Northwest Natural, Cascade Natural Gas, and Avista. So specifically for this group, we'll be focusing on resources that are available to Pacific Power, Cascade Natural Gas, and Avista customers. We are essentially paid for by the utility bills. So a really simple way, if you don't remember anything else from this presentation, if the site that you're working with has services from Pacific Power, Cascade Natural Gas, or Avista, if you pay it to that utility, you are eligible for Energy Trust incentives. And so most of what we focus on is providing energy efficiency programs, meaning that it's basically the cheapest way to help folks save money and save power for all of the ratepayers across the state. We also do a lot of renewable energy projects. A lot of people think about us for solar. So those would be projects in Pacific Power territory for Eastern Oregon folks. We do a lot of it up in Wallowa Resources. And then something that we're not quite as known for, which I would say we don't show as well in the rural communities, is that we actually do a lot of what we call market transformation, where we artificially buy down costs of goods at the retail level. So things like LED light bulbs and hot water heaters. If you go to Home Depot or to Ace Hardware, you might see little tags that have Energy Trust logos on them. And that is demonstrating that these things have a decreased cost to help folks make these choices for energy efficiency at the purchase point level, and then drive the cost down due to uptake for the program. And then this is just a little map here. A lot of folks, I think what makes Energy Trust resources maybe a little bit more challenging in Eastern Oregon is that we're not a continuous line across the map, meaning that there are communities, probably with the exception of very few, that have other utility programs. And I think I saw Tucker Billman who would be representing Oregon Trail Electric Cooperative. We also have service territory that overlaps with Umatilla Electric Cooperative and Idaho Power. Each one of those utility programs also has energy efficiency and renewable energy programs. So if you're ever reaching out to me and we find that our programs aren't relevant to your specific project, always happy to connect you with other folks to find out what resources would be available to you. I should also say that in addition to my outreach manager role, we do have regionally based field staff, one of whom I'll be introducing a little bit later in the presentation. But I would say I'm the mile wide, inch deep person, and that after I learn about whatever your specific projects need, usually I'm referring you to one of our really smart technical experts. The other thing I wanted to kind of set the stage with here when we're talking about affordable housing is why does Energy Trust care? We care because energy usage plays into factors of energy burden, which can make housing affordable or not affordable. And we're seeing this a lot in some of our older housing stock where folks are experiencing higher rents and higher utility bills. And so I just wanted to share this graph to kind of give folks, now this is just based on single family home energy usage, but just the percentages that folks typically spend on energy at the home level, and that acknowledging that affordable housing and workforce housing these types of things should be considered when we're talking about the overall big picture, because a mortgage or a rental payment is just one factor that an individual or family is facing when they're looking at their overall total household costs and what might make something affordable in a community and what might make it not affordable, where somebody is deciding on a job, where they're going to live, what makes the world go round, whether or not they can afford healthcare, whether or not they can afford gas for a better paying job. These are things that I think our communities really need to keep in mind as we're talking about the type of housing stock that we're investing in and what we're building. So Energy Trust has what we call market segments, and to simplify, we break it down into existing homes, new homes, and actually our multifamily slots under our commercial housing portfolio. So I'll just kind of go into a few resources pretty quickly. For the purposes of the PDF afterwards, that link that says incentive information sheet, that is a comprehensive list that shows the current dollar amounts that are available for our different programs. I think Energy Trust is most well known for what I'll call our standard incentives, which means you install something that is of a certain energy efficiency rating at Energy Trust. After that install, you submit the paperwork, we send you a check in the mail for that amount. There is no pre-approval required for that. And you can essentially do that through any contractor within your community that's licensed to do so. For our income qualified programs, instant incentives, and on-bill repayment programs, these are programs that are only offered through particular contracts in the region that we refer to as trade allies. They are brought in under our program umbrella. They understand how to do the paperwork for the customer. And for these three categories, the contractor actually offers the incentive, normally that same amount that we send as a check out through the mail, as a discount at the time of service, which lowers the upfront barrier for a household to pay. So then we actually pay the contractor on the back end. These types of programs also work really well to layer with other incentive programs like community development block grants for single family housing, because they're not being transactional on the back end, where administratively you're waiting on this check or some other input dollar amount that you've got to figure out how that plays nicely with how you're submitting expenses. This actually is offered as a discount on the invoice, so it makes it really favorable. And you'll see also we have an on-bill repayment. Again, this is similarly fashioned. Contractor offers the service as a discount to the customer at the time of service, and then the balance of the bill goes on to the individual's utility bill. It is only eligible to people who are owner-occupied sites, which is pretty critical, because a lien does get put on the home for the dollar amount that is the balance for the homeowner, and it's paid off incrementally through the utility bill. That on-bill repayment for our region is only available through Pacific Power, and I understand Avista will soon be offering this soon. And I just put two things there: heat pumps and insulation, just to kind of make you think about the different things, but certainly other things would be available, like windows, through the on-bill repayment program. And then we have a variety of promotional offers available through this program, which include things like gas furnace incentives that have been increased to $1,000 for income qualified households, and things like heat pumps for manufactured housing that are only available in Eastern Oregon. We also have something that we've introduced in the past couple of years that's really starting to gain traction in our service region. We're calling it community partner funding. And part of the reason why we started this process is because we acknowledge that Energy Trust has underserved certain markets, rural, low income, communities of color, and that there are existing trusted community partners that live in these communities and have these existing relationships with communities that we have underserved. So in a way of reinforcing those relationships and helping these community-based organizations build capacity that directly corresponds to community needs. We developed this partnership funding pathway to allow we're bringing back home energy assessments. It's something that Energy Trust used to do. I think something that's really helpful and beneficial. It allows us to have that first touch point with a homeowner to let them know what type of energy efficiency investments they might want to make. And it doesn't require them to do anything. It's a free service that's available through these community partner funding. And then we actually pay the community-based organization for doing those energy assessments on behalf of Energy Trust. This allows also that community partner to offer through that energy assessment increased incentive amounts that the homeowner can access should they decide to take on any of these energy efficiency upgrades, and as well as a connection to trade ally contractors in the region who are able to offer that incentive amount as a discount on the invoice at the time of service to lower the upfront cost to the homeowner. And currently in our service region, these incentive pathways are available through Uvalcree, that is based in Malheur County and Umatilla County. We have Wallowa Resources, who is offering that in Wallowa County, and the Sustainable Living Center was just brought on board, and they're focusing what I would say is sort of the Milton Freewater area down to Athena, Weston in our community. Also, new homes is a significant portion of our Energy Trust work in other parts of the state. I would say that there's currently minimal uptake for that program in Eastern Oregon. It is a comprehensive program that is based on the energy performance as the home is modeled on a sliding scale on percentage above code and how it performs. So it starts at 10% and the incentives work on a sort of sliding scale up to 40%. Participating builders, or what we call owner builders, which would be like if you were an individual were taking on building their own house, must enroll in the program and work with a program verifier to do building modeling and then testing of the home. So there's two critical times that the builder would work with the verifier. Once when insulation is installed, before the drywall is up, because air sealing is a really critical part of energy efficiency, and the verifier needs to help that builder take advantage of any of those air sealing opportunities that could come through that. And then the next time is actually when the home is completed. The verifier comes through, does some pressure testing of duct systems, if there are any, and the whole home comprehensively, and then make sure that the installed equipment meets all the energy efficiency requirements. We also, through this funding pathway, offer something called early design assistance. So if communities through this workforce housing, if you're working through with a builder and you want to make sure that energy efficiency is part of that conversation, we do have incentives that pay for folks' time at the table to talk about our energy modeling process, make a connection with the program, talk about energy goals, get folks lined up with that type of strategy. And I will share for the purposes of this group, if you do take advantage of those early design assistance incentives, it does not obligate you to participating in any further part of the process, but it does allow you to, we do pay for that time for you to talk about it. So I think it's time well spent. So even if you decide to, like, you know, we're not going to go full bore into an energy performance score program that it's going to provide us a certificate afterwards that shows our energy usage, we just want to talk about this, we have incentives to pay for that time. And then this isn't necessarily relevant currently to Eastern Oregon, but I think it's important for folks here to know. We did, as a result of the fires in Southern Oregon, offer what we're calling fire recovery response incentives, which are increased incentives that include resiliency aspects to new construction. And thinking about our landscape and thinking about some of the droughts and thinking about some of the heat wave situations, you know, energy efficiency is one part of what we're offering. But when we think about things that are sort of byproducts of energy efficient housing construction, we're thinking about things like comfort. So when we have those heat waves, that you have highly efficient heating and cooling equipment, the cooling being the key aspect. You also have increased air sealing and building envelope that helps those temperature transfers. So when it's 110 degrees for an entire week, it makes the house inside more resilient to those temperature transfers coming indoors. And, from a health aspect, a well-sealed, well-ventilated building shell and structure keeps that smoke from coming in, helps those allergens from affecting the health of occupants. So just things to think about there. Also, something that we do have for manufactured housing stock, which I know we have a lot of in Eastern Oregon, we do have free services, free duct sealing and repair for pre-qualified homes. If you have manufactured housing parks that have not taken advantage of that, that's something that CAPCO also does as well. These would be for homeowners potentially that qualify for income levels above what CAPCO would serve. We have the heat pump promotions that I mentioned previously. And then also something that has been in the works, it was a manufactured home replacement pilot. We were offering incentives up to $17,500 to replace old inefficient manufactured homes with new energy efficient, Energy Star manufactured homes. That program was put on pause, but it is worth mentioning this group as I see it being relevant coming into the future when there's more, the pilot gets removed and there's an actual program in place. Also, residential multifamily, this is the program that I was explaining. So this is for existing multifamily homes. It falls under a commercial portfolio. We have a standard incentives, which can currently be up to $250,000 per year per site. If there are things like windows and HVAC equipment that a property manager is looking to make upgrades. We also, like through the community partner funding, offer free walkthrough surveys of multifamily properties. It's just that we ask for an enrollment of that site into our program. And this program can also access community partner funding solutions. We also have custom solutions, which I'll go into in the next couple slides. So commercial programs, we have sort of two gateways. One is a standard, you install X amount of energy efficiency equipment. We pay you per piece of equipment that qualifies. And I have new natural gas, but it also includes electrical equipment for any commercial, municipal, institutional facility in the state of Oregon, which also includes multifamily properties. Pre-qualification is not required under this standard menu. You must install eligible equipment and you must complete the incentive application within 90 days. So if there's properties that you're working with, certainly can put you in touch with our regional account manager under this program portfolio. We also have commercial existing buildings programs, and for a limited time, this slide is calling out that we have increased incentives that are available for gas saving equipment for existing multifamily properties in Oregon. And soon there will be increased incentives for electrical equipment. We just haven't introduced those quite yet. We also have a custom incentive pathway. This is for equipment and building types that maybe fall outside of those standard menu items. They do require additional energy analysis from regional folks, which we typically cover the cost for. All equipment purchases, however, must be pre-qualified by our program before the time of purchase and installation. And then at times, this might trigger a post-installation verification to make sure that the equipment is performing to the energy efficiency requirements that we do have to meet our cost effectiveness.
Karen?
Yes.
I just wanted to let you know that we're running out of time for your presentation. So if you could wrap up shortly, like in the next minute or so, that would be great.
Sure. New commercial, same as the single family, which is that we have programs for new multifamily construction, which include early design assistance incentives to talk about energy goals, and then technical assistance and resources. Saw Titus on there. We've paid for portions of rare interns in communities. and provided some of these other resources to communities like yours. So if you're having more organized efforts to talk about energy efficiency as it relates to your workforce housing, let's talk about that and see if there's an opportunity for us to plug in to help you write grants or other things. And then working together grants, if there is an opportunity for you to do more energy efficiency discussions with community members, we do have a new cycle of grants up to $10,000 for nonprofit organizations. Again, looking to perform and provide energy efficiency and renewable energy options to your community. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Karen. We appreciate all of that information. There's a lot of resources available. And now I'd like Drew Davis from USDA Rural Development to tell us a little bit about rural development programs.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. There's some good information here. I appreciate some of these presentations. Let me see if I can get this screen up here. Okay, are you able to see that?
It's not quite in presentation mode, but it's close. On our side.
Yeah,
But of
I
course
clicked
you
it.
can-
Not sure what's happening here.
If you have more than one screen, sometimes it'll jump to a different screen.
Yeah.
But we can see it.
Okay, yeah. All right, well, I'm representing USDA Rural Development today. But as the single family housing program director, I'm going to talk strictly about my program. USDA Rural Development has over 40 different programs, but I'm going to stick with the single family housing. And what we are is a lender. And so we typically deal with individuals here in the Portland office and throughout the state with our direct program. We also have our guaranteed program we'll talk about. So if it's a dream to own a home in rural Oregon, and we define that as communities that are 35,000 in population or less. So big share of the state is considered rural. And if a borrower is unable to obtain standard conventional lenders back in the 60s, Congress decided that people who wanted home ownership should have that opportunity if they didn't have the typical down payment requirement. And so we now today have both our guaranteed and direct program. And a lot of people, when they hear the word guarantee, they go, oh, especially an individual borrower, oh, I want that guarantee program. Well, what the guarantee means is that USDA is providing to a lender, a retail type lender, credit union, bank, a loan note guarantee. That's what they mean by that term. If you want to own let me switch slides. If you want to own a home, but can't get a mortgage from a private lender, then USDA is a very viable option. Our program allows you to either buy a home, an existing home, which you see a lot of, but in rural Oregon, especially in the last few years, it's been extremely difficult because the inventory isn't there. So both with the guarantee program, and we certainly do a lot of it with our direct program, is the ability to use the loan to build a home.
Drew, just so you know, your slides aren't advancing.
They are or not?
They are not on our view.
Oh, really? Huh. It's clicking forward here. I'm not sure.
I think it's because it moved to a different screen than the screen you shared.
Okay.
Because we're seeing your PowerPoint presentation and there you go.
Okay. Is it on the welcome?
Yes.
Okay. And let me click back one. Is it back to buy or build a home?
Yes.
Okay, good, thanks. So I was talking about the building of a home. Quick note here, and like I said, we've been doing new construction for many years. That can also be a manufactured home through an approved dealer. Challenge, and I'll talk about a little bit of this at the end, but the challenge has been is with the material costs and finding contractors to work in rural Oregon. It's become extreme difficulty. But the slide of let's make it easy. New construction isn't necessarily easy, but it's from a program standpoint, our home ownership programs offer, it's a no down payment program. It's 100% loan to value financing. It is based off income, so you have to be income eligible. It is a fixed rate for the direct program. It's a 33 or 38 year term. Current rate is 3%. Most folks are, because of on the direct program, because of the subsidy based off their income level, it would be as if the rate was amortized at a 1%. And it's a shared subsidy, shared equity program. So in the future, if they sell, refinance, whatever it is, then they may capture a portion or all of the subsidy, depending on what kind of equity gain was made. So the idea of the program is that they're able to gain in equity and be able to move forward and gain wealth. Closing costs can certainly be included. Even repairs can be included. So if it's a home but it needed windows, a roof, whatever, we can do up to 100% loan financing. You can have some seller supported funds as well. There's no private mortgage insurance with the direct program, and there's no prepayment penalties. This is gives you an idea of what we've done through the with our housing program in the state back in 2019 at 300 million. 2020, we still were operating, I think it was February, March, COVID happened. So we still had a pretty good year. You can see where we dropped down in 2021 because of what was happening, across the country. And then this year we're trending back up. And so we put a lot of money into the state for housing. The guaranteed home loan, as I mentioned earlier, it's through banks and credit unions, and it's for the low and moderate income applicant. And the reason that they can do 100% loan to value financing is because we offer the loan note guarantee up to 90% of loss. So this reduces the risk to the lender and why they're able to offer this. The guaranteed loan also has the same ability as our direct loan that we can use it to, mostly it's for existing, but it can be used as a construction loan as well. We've had challenge with trying to find a lender in the state that actually would do that. But the program itself is designed to allow for it. But applicants, like any other lender, has to meet the income, eligibility, credit requirements, and so on. And if you don't qualify for conventional lending or even through the guarantee, then we typically can do it through our direct program. This you see is looks like a new construction. It may even possibly be a manufactured home. Just by looking at it, I didn't create the slide, but it certainly is an option, and especially in rural Oregon and central and eastern Oregon. A manufactured housing is certainly still, even though it's difficult to lead times for manufactured homes are certainly out there. I've heard recently as far as 18 months, but we can support new manufactured housing. When a borrower changes hands or stops living in the property, we talked about the possibility of the recapture of the subsidy, and it's a shared equity program. But there's a website that people can go to, and it's www.rd.usda.gov. This is where we send most inquiries that call that have some general questions. But within that website, they have the ability to plug in their own income information. And if they're interested in a particular area, there's also a site location that they have an address to see if it's an eligible area. But the income tool is very helpful for them to say, oh, gee, based off the income that I'm putting in here, I may be eligible for a $200,000 loan, or if maybe it's an $80,000 loan. It kind of gives them an idea of whether they want to move forward or not. And within that same site, it answers many of the program questions, and they can actually fill in an application directly. The next slide is something that I really support. The self-help housing. We have nonprofits that do the self-help housing, and they use a program called the 523 to be the grantee, which helps them with the technical assistance portion of it. And then the borrowers themselves, use our Section 502 direct loan program to do the construction. And the most recent example we have was one in McMinnville. They just finished that project a few months ago. And it was 12 homes that they build all at the same time, and they have a certain amount of hours required each week. But they have a sweat equity, and usually with the sweat equity, it's 15, maybe 20%. In this particular case, because of the way the housing market has improved, some of them had significantly more equity by the time they moved into their home. But it's a wonderful program. It's good for rural areas, and so we're always looking for a potential nonprofit or a habitat or something like that could manage the construction and manage the site. Who's eligible? Assistance under these programs is available to applicants in areas designated rural, and it's really an income-based program. A lot of people think that, oh, it's federal, I have to be a first-time home buyer or something like that. That's not really, that's not the case. But it's not for an investor. It's for individual home that somebody will be living in. And this is contact information, and the website of the rd.usda is the website that would have the links for program details. And I want to talk real brief, I know time's running out here, about the challenges that we're facing, the borrowers are facing. Oregon average loan size across the country, I get a report every week. We currently we bounce every week, but we're currently number 2, 3, and sometimes number 4 highest average loan size in the country. And typically you could probably guess who's the highest. Well, it's usually Hawaii and sometimes on the East Coast. You would think California but California is not. California has a lot of rural area. And so it's not a stat that I necessarily want, because what that means is we keep using the word for these forums of affordable, and affordable is not really happening in my program. You can't, my average loan size, you know, is over 300,000 in many cases. That I don't define that as affordable. And so what we're doing is we have categories of moderate income for the guarantee and low and then very low. And so what we're finding is that we're underwriting many people in the very low category, and they're just not able to find a home. So the self-help and or any other group that can support construction or something, I think is what's going to happen, especially in the rural areas, to be able to recreate what I would call affordable, and that's has to be somewhere in the 200,000 range from what we see. The other program I'll touch real brief on is that if you're an existing homeowner, we do have home repair loan. We're part of the pilot state. We can do for the very low income borrower. We have many seniors that we can do up to a $40,000 loan, 1% interest amortized up to 20 years. And if someone in the home is very low income and they're 62 years of age, we have a potential for a $10,000 grant for life, health, safety reasons. So those are kind of the main programs: 502 guarantee, 502 direct, 504 repair, and then the 523 self-help program. And
Well, thank you,
done.
Drew,
Thank you.
for sharing all of that information. It sounds like there's a lot of good programs, but we just need some lower cost housing to go with it in some ways. So Chantal has been monitoring questions, and I want to turn over the mic to her.